Welcome to the Truth and Liberty broadcast. We believe we have a mandate to bring godly change to our nation and the world through the 7 spheres or mountains of influence. To further this cause, we give away a product every week that will empower you to get involved in changing your life and changing our world. You can register for our weekly giveaway by subscribing at truthandliberty.net. You can also subscribe to our newsletter to receive weekly updates on guests, news, and much more. This is an interactive live cast, and we welcome your questions. To ask a question during the live cast, use the comment or chat features. Now get ready to dive into this week's topics with our hosts on location in Colorado, USA.
Hello, this is Andrew Wommack, and we're getting ready for our Monday night Truth and Liberty broadcast. And I tell you, we got a great broadcast set up for you. We got our friend Lieutenant Colonel Allen West with us. He's remoting in from Garland, Texas, and of course he's a military man, Lieutenant Colonel, but he's also running for the chairmanship of the Texas Republican Committee. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Republican Party. Yeah.
And we were just talking about that, man, there's so many Californians moving to Texas, and if Texas ever went liberal, we'd be sunk.
Yeah.
So he's in a battleground state. We got some great things that we're going to be talking about, but we want you to be a part of this broadcast. Mm-hmm. You know, we have anywhere from like 10 and 12,000 is the low end of people that watch this, and sometimes as many as 80,000 people tune in. And we would like for you to be a part of this. You can ask questions. We've got a website that we want to advertise meetings, and this is Richard Harris. He is our chief counsel here at Truth and Liberty, and you've been a real blessing to me. Man, we couldn't do this without you. And I want Richard to just share with you a little bit about how you can get involved before we invite the Colonel on.
Absolutely. Well, it's so exciting to have Colonel West with us tonight, and I'm so thankful to have all of you guys watching us tonight. Hopefully you're watching on our website at truthandliberty.net, and if you're on Facebook, that's fine, but you might get censored there, so hop on over to our website at truthandliberty.net, and I want to encourage everybody to check out our resources page on our website. Go to the resources tab where we have 24/7 news feed from our favorite conservative news sources. And also, I just learned today that a lot of people aren't aware that every live cast, we post show notes for the public to see, and you can see all the latest news there. Just scroll down a little bit and click on see show notes, and you can see our favorite picks for the news from the last week.
I didn't know that.
Well, yeah, every week.
I'm going to have to go check that out.
Yeah, it's a great resource. We're all about keeping people informed.
Thanks for doing that.
But like Andrew said, this is an interactive process, and if you're watching on our website, you can click in the chat function there or a comment section on Facebook and post your questions, and hopefully we'll be able to get to those, and you can have a chance to have Colonel West or Andrew address those tonight. We've got some exciting events coming up here at Andrew Wommack Ministries in February 7th and 8th. Andrew's got a Gospel Truth Conference in Orlando, and Greg Fritz is going to be joining him at the Hilton Orlando there. If you live in the Florida area, or even if you don't, that's going to be a great event. You want to make it to that. The annual men's advance here at Charis Bible College. I love the men's advance, Andrew. It is an awesome time. It's transformational. It's energizing. You want to make it out to Woodland Park for that, and that's going to be on March 12th to the 24th. And you can get more information and register on awmi.net/events. And then last, I wanted to mention the Army Conference. You're like, Army? Well, Army is Association of Related Ministries International. Did I say that right?
That's correct. Yep.
And that's an organization for like-minded ministers here connected with Andrew's ministry. And they're going to have an Army conference March the 23rd of this year here in Woodland Park. So check that out.
And that is a special day for me. Do you know what that is?
March the 23rd, 1968, I think.
You can't graduate from my school without knowing that date. That's the day that God changed my life, the day that He appeared to me, and man, so it'll be 52 years.
Wow, praise God. That's awesome.
I've never gotten over it, never plan on it.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, like they said when we introduced the program tonight, too, we have a giveaway. Last week, we gave away the Grace, the Power of the Gospel, to Mike McGill. So congratulations, Mike. And if you're watching tonight and you'd like to be eligible to receive our free product giveaway, then just go to the subscribe button and put your name in there, and you'll sign up for our weekly newsletter and be eligible for our product giveaway. And this week, we're giving away God and Country, a CD series with Andrew and David Barton, where you guys are on here talking about the freedom and faith and family and the issues of our day. It's an awesome set. Encourage you guys to subscribe so you can be eligible for that. And we are here at Truth and Liberty, a 501c4 organization, and we depend on your generosity and your donations. If you believe in what we're doing, we'd encourage you to support us financially, and you can do that on our website by going to the Donate button, clicking that, and making your contribution, and hopefully you can also make it a recurring one. We really appreciate your generosity. And last tonight, if you need prayer, we have trained prayer ministers standing by. Our prayer center is now 24/5, isn't it? 5 days a week, 24 hours a day. So call in at 719-635-1111, or you can click on the prayer button there on our website and have someone join with you, a faith-filled, Bible-believing Christian, agree with you in prayer. So thanks for watching, guys. It's going to be a great live cast.
Amen. And as I said at the beginning of the broadcast, we're really privileged tonight to have Lieutenant Colonel Alan West with us. He's remoting in from Garland, Texas. So God bless you, Colonel. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, and Happy New Year. And it was great to be out there with you in the Truth and Liberty Summit last fall, and I look forward to coming back.
Yeah, you spoke at that summit with E.W. Jackson, and I put on this joint deal, and I tell you, it was powerful. It was really good. So right now, you are in the process of running for the Republican chairman of Texas. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing there.
Well, the interesting thing, a lot of folks think that the Lone Star State is a very strong red state, conservative state. But if you look at what's been happening in the last few years, we're trending in a very disconcerting direction. First of all, Mitt Romney won the state of Texas in 2012 by 16 percentage points. Then 4 years later, President Trump only won it by 9 percentage points. Then 2 years later, Ted Cruz only won the state of Texas by 2.3 percentage points. As a matter of fact, the largest conservative red county in the state of Texas is Tarrant County, and Ted Cruz didn't even win it. We also, in that 2018 cycle, lost 12 state House seats. We lost 2 state Senate seats. We lost 2 U.S. congressional seats and 56 judgeships. As a matter of fact, in 2018, every single elected Republican official within the Houston city limits lost their race. So you all have experienced the exact same thing out there in Colorado, where Colorado was a strong red state, trended to purple, and now it's a blue state. I know you've got some issues with that governor out there, who is someone that I served with in Congress. But Colorado is pretty much so dominated by 2 areas, and that's the Denver and Boulder area. But now you're starting to see some of that migration coming out of California shifting down to Colorado Springs. So when you look at what happened last November in Virginia, a state that gave us our first, third, and fifth presidents, the authors of our Declaration of Independence and Constitution, now we see the Democrat Socialist Party, the left, is in control of Virginia because of really 2 counties, and that's Fairfax and Prince William. So you're starting to see this trend happening even here in the state of Texas. And it's very important that we keep Texas a strong conservative state, especially knowing that we will pick up 3 congressional districts in this next round of the census and the redistricting. And we don't want to see the left, the Democrat Party, who is only 8 seats away from taking over the Texas State House, do so, and they be in charge of redrawing those
So
maps.
who's in charge of redrawing the districts? Is that Democrats or Republicans?
Right now it's the Republicans because they have a majority in the Texas State House, but only 8 seats because of the 12 that were lost back in 2018. So 8 seats away, and the Democrats can take over the Texas State House and redraw those lines. And that's why there's a huge focus on flipping the Texas State House. Nancy Pelosi said they're going to do it. Hillary Clinton and Eric Holder is in charge of the National Democratic Redistricting Committee, and they've got their focus here.
So, I've heard that the group that took over Colorado, the Gang of Four, what was it they called it, the Blue?
The Blueprint.
Blueprint. Anyway, I heard that the group that turned Colorado blue has taken those same principles and strategies and specifically implementing them in Texas. Is this a concerted effort, or is this just the migration from California that these people are bringing their politics? What's happening in Texas?
It is a strategic effort, Pastor. And when you think about Oregon, or even Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado. My birth state of Atlanta, Georgia, Stacey Abrams almost won the gubernatorial election there, and she never left the Atlanta metropolitan area. I was talking with my older brother. I was visiting down in South Georgia during the Christmas holiday season, and she never campaigned in South Georgia. So what you see happening is that the left is focusing on flipping and taking control of major urban population centers, even in strong conservative states. And by doing so, it's just a simple aspect of math. The population will lend toward them, and you don't regenerate enough population in the out rural areas. And what's interesting is that here in Texas, you got 254 counties, but we're getting to the point where 8 to 9 counties in the state of Texas are starting to dictate the political atmosphere of the Lone Star State.
Why is it that these densely populated areas are going liberal? What is it about living in a city that makes a person liberal?
Well, it's very interesting that Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter to James Madison back some time ago and said that if we continue to pile ourselves up upon the cities, much as they do as in Europe, we will eventually come as corrupt as Europe. And that's exactly what you see happening. And all of these cities are controlled by the progressive socialist left, the Democrat Party. And that's where you see the greatest amount of failure in their policies and their programs. I think that what we have to do, and I'm going to share a statistic that I'm sure you know about, only 24% nationally, only 24% of Christians come out and vote and participate in elections. And when you think about the most important election in the United States of America, which is school board, it is also the election that has the least amount of voter participation all across the country. And when you look at what is happening with the indoctrination of our children, not the educating of our children, this is why we see ourselves in this predicament all across the United States.
And could you address this too? I think you probably would be better received on this than I would. But how come it is that blacks seem to traditionally go liberal? Why are they in the Democratic camp? What is it that holds that when, in my opinion, I think that the Democratic Party has, in a sense, it's modern slavery, the way that they've enslaved the blacks.
It is absolutely so. I call it the 21st century economic plantation. I was born in 1961 in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia. And Pastor, I was born in a blacks-only hospital in 1961.
Wow.
But the interesting
now,
thing
see, I've heard things like this, but I grew up in Tarrant County.
Yeah.
And honestly, Arlington, Texas is where I grew up, and I didn't see any of that. When they finally integrated the school, we only had 2 blacks. We didn't have very many blacks in Arlington at that time, but there was 2 blacks that came into the school when I was in high school. And did you know that both of them, one became the most popular, voted most popular by all of the whites. We had 2,500 whites in this school and 2 blacks and their sister, so there was a total of 3. He became the most popular, and the other one became the most likely to succeed. So I didn't grow up with this prejudice, but you're saying it was a black-only hospital.
Yeah, I was born in a blacks-only hospital, Hughes Spalding Hospital in Atlanta. But the interesting thing, though, the juxtaposition is that at the time that I was born in 1961, the 2-parent household in the black community was 77%. Now, today, the 2-parent household in the black community nationally is at 24%.
Oh, wow.
And you can trace that right back to the policies of a Democrat president, Lyndon Johnson, the Great Society. And what he did, he took a very proud community, and by way of social welfare programs, he destroyed it, turned it into a community of victims. And so when you break down the family, all the other things, all the other social ills come in with the lack of quality education, the lack of small business entrepreneurship and growth, the crime that you see, the drug use, and all of this. So what we have to do is start talking to the black community and Hispanic community about their faith. And I think that we have not done a good job as conservatives in talking to people about their principles and values. The most conservative people in the United States of America yesterday, Sunday, were blacks and Hispanics. But, my church, that 4th Street United Methodist Church in Atlanta, we had a direct partnership with the white United Methodist Church out in Decatur. And every month, we either picked up and went out to their church, or they picked up and came to our church. And the great thing is that after having church services, We all sat down and did that thing which good old Southern church-going people do. We went to eat.
I was going to say, you had to eat. You can't fellowship without eating.
That's right. And then after that, we had conversation. So I think it's important that we have those church-to-church fellowships and relationships that can break down some of these borders and boundaries.
Well, I'm glad that you're running for the Republican chairman. Man, we are in a battle, and to have a military man there, I think that's awesome.
Amen.
I'm excited about
great.
it. So let me ask you this. With your military background, what's your take on President Trump's taking out this General Soleimani?
Well, I think the Happy New Year gift to the Ayatollahs was that Jimmy Carter and Barack Obama are not in the White House. And that was a big shock for them to see that. And it was the first time that we finally had a leadership in the White House that took the fight to the Iranians. This is not something that just happened the other day. Back in 1979, of course, I was a senior in high school going into the University of Tennessee after graduation. And that was when our embassy was overrun. 444 days, 50 some odd Americans were held hostage. And then 4 years later, if you recall, the Beirut barracks bombing, where 243 Marines and sailors lost their lives because of a truck bomb by Hezbollah, which is the proxy army of Iran. And guess whose fingerprints was on that terrorist bombing?
Oh, was Soleimani behind all of that?
All of that, absolutely, all the way up to today. I served in Operation Iraqi Freedom over there in 2003, and over the course of the Iraqi operation, 18 to 20% of our young men and women who were killed or maimed, it was the result of this incredibly lethal improvised explosive device called an explosive force penetrator. It was produced and developed in Iran, and guess who coordinated the supplying of those EFPs into Iraq? Was General Soleimani. Now, Soleimani had just finished coordinating with the Shiite militia paramilitary force the mortar and rocket attack that killed an American contractor. And he was flying back from Lebanon, continued to coordinate with Hezbollah, their proxy terrorist army. And Soleimani has been under a United Nations travel ban for, I think, about 20 years as the terrorist leader of a designated terrorist organization, the Quds Force. And, we have been trying to appease, accommodate, acquiesce, and negotiate with Iran. We have been shipping them billions of dollars, and all they were doing is turning that over to invest in the export of Islamic terrorism. They're the #1 state sponsor of Islamic terrorism. So what President Trump did, he had a window of opportunity to take out this terrorist leader. He was not some foreign official. He was a terrorist leader, no different from Osama bin Laden or al-Baghdadi of ISIS. And as you can see, it has really caused a conundrum for Iran, because that's not a response that they have seen since April of 1988, when Ronald Reagan enacted Operation Praying Mantis that destroyed half of the Iranian Navy because an Iranian mine struck a U.S. naval vessel.
Yeah, and I imagine that many of them are wondering, if he can do this to Soleimani, what about me?
Yeah, right.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll see many of them traveling outside of Iran anytime soon.
When I was in Vietnam, they had these restrictions on what we could do, and you could see the trucks driving down the Ho Chi Minh Trail from where I was, but they were out of bounds. And they were supplying the troops that were firing at us. You knew that they were eventually going to kill us, but our hands were tied. And it was frustrating to us. I would suspect that when you were in Iraq and saw these things, that for the military people, they're probably shouting in the trenches over what happened because they finally see somebody taking action.
You're absolutely right. And welcome home, Pastor. My older brother was a Marine infantryman in Vietnam. He was wounded at Khe Sanh. And you're right. It was George Santayana who said in 1928, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And so when you allow the enemy to have a sanctuary where they can train, they can stage, and they can deploy, and they can conduct operations against your troops, you're putting our troops in a harmful disadvantage. When I was in Afghanistan and also in Iraq, we had some of these insidious rules of engagement that said that you could not engage the enemy until they fired upon you. Well, in the first 2 to 3 seconds of a firefight, someone's going to lose their life.
That's right.
So it is so, incredibly boosting for the morale and the enthusiasm of our young men and women that are in these combat zones that we are taking the fight to the enemy. Look, we're not opening up the paper. We're not looking at YouTube videos anymore of ISIS beheading people or some of the vile, horrific, and barbaric ways that they use to execute people, because President Trump said to the military, go out here and take the fight to them. He relieved those restrictions. And I think that if we're going to be successful in Afghanistan, where we just saw the Taliban take the lives of 2 of our U.S. soldiers by way of an improvised explosive device, we got to take the fight to them in their sanctuaries in Pakistan. Because you can't allow the enemy to have any sanctuary. And that's the message that was sent to Iran, was that this guy, who's a terrorist leader in violation of a United Nations travel ban, well, guess what? You don't get to plan and you don't get to kill Americans on the watch of President Trump.
I think that's great. And I believe that if you are going to appease them all the time the way that Obama did, I believe it actually emboldens them, because those people, they understand force. That's the way that they think and operate, and they see the stuff that Obama did as weakness, and they took advantage of it.
Yeah.
Well, and the Iranians failed to understand that there was someone different in the White House. President Trump did not respond when they fired the missiles into the oil fields in Saudi Arabia. President Trump did not respond when they shot down that U.S. drone. And that was the right action to take. But when they attacked and killed an American citizen, when they sought to attack sovereign U.S. territory, because that is what an embassy is sovereign United States territory. Furthermore, they were spray painting Soleimani's name on the walls of our embassy. So the president took action, and that sent a very clear message, not just to Iran, but think about the message it sends to Russia, to China, and also North Korea, who we know are colluding with Iran in many ways, shapes, forms, and fashions.
Well, a lot of people, especially on the Democratic side, are now just, pushing the panic button that this is going to lead to war and things like that. And nobody wants war, but I think that actually strength, it may cause some short-term problems, but in the long term, if this would have been done multiple administrations back, we wouldn't be having the problems that we've got today.
No, you're absolutely right, Pastor. As a matter of fact, Ronald Reagan's maxim was peace through strength. Yep. And I will tell you that, being a former artilleryman, that the Iranians intentionally pretty much so hit dirt when they responded after Soleimani's death. They did not want to see this escalate any further. But as a propaganda act, they knew that they had to do something. And of course, President Trump did need to respond. How did he respond? He responded by increasing the economic sanctions. And that is why you see even more pressure within Iran now, with protests against the Iranian regime and their rule, their totalitarian rule that, I believe close to 75 to 80% of the Iranian population is younger, 35 years and younger. They don't want to live under this tyranny anymore.
And, I heard today that, of course, Iran denied that they had shot down, or was that Iraq? Who shot down the airliner?
It was Iran.
It was Iran. They denied for a while that they had shot that down. And now, just yesterday, I think they came out and admitted it was done by, quote, mistake. But they are having protests, massive protests now. And they even said that one of the chants was death to Khomeini. Which, man, that is radical, because they have been ruling with an iron fist. And I think that, again, Trump has probably emboldened them to stand up and protest.
He has. And as a matter of fact, he sent out a tweet over the weekend in Farsi, the official language of the Persian people, and it talked about that support to those protesters. Now, contrast that with the support that did not come from Barack Obama when he was president for the Green Movement, when they were standing up against the Iranians, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad and the Ayatollahs then. Completely different response, completely different action being taken by this White House, and it should be commended. But unfortunately, we have people in the United States of America that hate the president so much that they cannot celebrate this incredible victory against Iran.
And in the same way that the military has been encouraged by Trump taking a stand and showing some force, I bet that the military is probably distressed over some of the political leaders basically taking the side of Iran in this thing.
Well, you're absolutely right. But I think that in the long run, Pastor, it's going to hurt the Democrats, because they have just created a flurry of commercial advertisements with their own words
Yep.
that will be used against them in the
Right.
fall when it comes to election season.
It seems like the Democrats are on the losing side of just about every issue, doesn't it?
I tell you what, if you were scripting this, how can we defeat the Democrats in 2020? I don't think that we could have scripted this better than what they're doing.
Yeah.
Pelosi holding back the articles of impeachment, and I just heard that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and some of these people are going to they're going to have to be in the Senate for the trial, and they're going to miss out on all of this politicking and promotion for the 2020.
Yeah, coming into the primaries.
You know, it's amazing. One of the quotes of Napoleon was, "Never get in the way of your enemy when he is destroying himself."
That's a great
I think
quote.
that's exactly what you see happening.
Yeah.
That is pretty awesome.
Absolutely.
So could I ask your opinion, too, on what's happening with the impeachment? You being in the military, you probably, again, have a perspective on this. Is what Trump did, is there any impeachable offense here with this call?
Well, of course not, Pastor. And having served in the United States House of Representatives, this is a political stunt. And again, Speaker Pelosi is, pretty much so damning herself by her own words, because she said this is such a grave issue. It has to be done without any political leanings, and it has to be done with a bipartisan nature. But yet it was a strict, partisan vote with these articles of impeachment. And you think about all the things, during the Obama administration, Operation Fast and Furious. You think about the abandoning of our Americans at the Benghazi embassy, and then lying about it, sending billions of dollars to the #1 state sponsor of Islamic terrorism. But yet none of those things raised the impeachment offense flag for the left. So what they are doing is showing that this is clearly about going after President Trump to undermine his authority. As a matter of fact, they said that they were going to continue to impeach him. And even if he is reelected, they're going to continue to impeach him. So this is a political stunt.
Well,
I believe what Nancy Pelosi did in trying to hold these things, these articles up, was to try to embarrass Mitch McConnell. But she has not studied her Constitution, because Mitch McConnell is not under any duress to, assure her of any type of fair trial. So,
and the first thing that they accused Trump of was this quid quo pro, which is holding back something until you do this. And she held back the impeachment articles until she could get them to meet her demand, which is quid quo pro.
Yeah.
She also heard that she contacted the Democratic representatives and said if they didn't vote for impeachment, that they would hold back the Democratic National Committee's support for their reelection, which is quid quo pro.
Quo.
She's
Yeah, absolutely.
guilty of everything she's accused Trump of.
And abuse of power. One of the articles is abuse of power. So there you go.
Absolutely.
No, you're absolutely right. And I live in one of the congressional districts that was lost to the Democrats here in Texas. And that freshman, Colin Allred, I'm quite sure that he received that threatening notification from Ms. Pelosi. And that's going to hurt him when it comes to the election later on in this year.
I'm praying that this will just be exposed. Matter of fact, I've actually been using the scriptures where it says they have been taken in the net that they spread. They caught in it themselves. They fell into the pit that they dig. And I believe that this is going to come back to bite them, and that there is going to be a landslide, and we gain back the House and the Senate and the presidency in 2020. And if that happens, man, it's just like taking Trump off the leash. There's no telling what we might get.
That's right.
It'll be
No,
awesome.
I agree wholeheartedly with your assessment, Pastor, because I believe that you're going to see a George McGovern, Michael Dukakis, or Walter Mondale type of moment happen for the Democrats, because their principles and values are not in line with that of the American people. And again, when you are looking at individuals that were upset about the killing of, Qasem Soleimani, a person that had the blood of Americans on his hands, whose side are you on? With whom are you aligning yourself? And so those are the type of things, their own words, as you just mentioned, are going to come back to haunt them. And this fall, when all of those commercial advertisements are going to be run.
Now, were you a U.S. congressman?
Yes, sir.
I was. So let me ask you this: how does it work that these congressmen they have been basically bullied into this? I mean, the Democratic thing has been taken over by the AOCs and all of this. And Pelosi said that she wasn't going to do this. She fought impeachment. How is this working that you get pressured into doing things that are against what you believe?
Well, it comes to that very simple crossroads that we all face when we're up there in Washington, D.C., and probably why I only served one term. It's because you have that choice between maintaining your principles and values. You know, Pastor, you and I took an oath to the Constitution of the United States of America. We didn't take an oath to a political party.
Yep.
We didn't take an oath to an individual. We said that we would support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that we would bear true faith and allegiance to the same. We took that obligation freely without any purpose of evasion or mental reservation, so help me God. And that was my guiding principle when I was up there in Washington, D.C., as well as the Bible. And so you get that, that choice when folks are saying, hey, are you with us or are you going to not be with us? And so often people look into that light and they are more so concerned about maintaining that elected position than they are about their principles and values, and they end up sacrificing the latter for the former. And that's why when you talk about the song by Michael Jackson, Man in the Mirror, the most important thing that I think that an elected official has to do at the end of the day is look at themselves in the mirror and still recognize the person that they saw at the beginning of that day.
Yeah.
And I think too many of them are not able to do that.
Well, I had a friend, Bob Yandian, who pastors in Tulsa, and he helped elect one of the people there in Oklahoma. I'm not sure if it was state or if it was federal, but anyway, he got him elected. He ran on a very conservative thing, and as soon as he got in, he started voting liberal and went against everything he said. So Bob Yandian contacted him and says, what is this? I helped get you elected. And this man didn't give him any specifics, but he says, you do not understand the strong arm tactics. You don't understand the things that they do. And he even implied, my pastor friend took it, that he was threatened personally, or his family was threatened if he didn't go along with stuff. Did you experience any of this strong arm stuff when you were in Congress?
Oh, well, absolutely. I can tell you that you do not have to buy yourself breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and probably they'll show up and give you a midnight snack if you want. I remember telling folks that, I used to eat MREs and really cold food.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to go to the Popeyes chicken right down the street or over to the Subway. I don't need to have a steak every night. But I remember, getting pressure because I did not think that GE should get a non-competitive bid for a second engine for the F-35 weapon system. And I got a visit from a GE official, and he started talking about how they could build a factory in my congressional district and bring jobs. Wow. And so again, it was all about, sacrifice your principles and just play along, get along, and this is how we'll take care of you. And, of course, the campaign contributions that will come to you from, some of those lobbyists. But it is a very interesting thing. It's a test of your will. It's a test of your honor, your integrity, and your character to be able to say that Washington, D.C. is not going to change me. And you have to be able to go back and tell your constituents what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. But the only way that this country will change if people are so concerned about their elected officials is they got to look at themselves and say that we can't continue to vote for the exact same thing, because that's what I think it was Einstein said, that's the definition of insanity, to continue to do the exact same thing and think you're going to get different results.
So one last question from me before we take some questions from our viewers here. Since you were in Congress, do you think that Trump has affected this deep state, the swamp? Are things changing, or is it still in full force?
I will tell you that probably the one criticism I would have for the president is that he did not do a good job of rooting out those ticks that are up there that have really buried in, and they have suckled the blood out of our country. But I don't think he understood how deep this problem was. And just think about it, if he were not the president, how this would be exacerbated, and we would not know so much that we do know now.
Yeah,
so
true.
I think it's imperative is because I think he will be reelected without a doubt. But as we go into a second term, if there's one thing that he can do, it is the government reform to get this back to a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and not just a government of self-interested bureaucrats.
Well, I've often said that he may not have drained the swamp, but he's lowered the level so that now a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of critters are showing.
Yeah, there you
Oh,
go.
yeah, we can see them all.
Yeah. And so how does he go about this? I mean, one of the criticisms I heard, I think it was, I'm not sure, it might have been E.W. Jackson, but somebody said that he came in and left a lot of Obama-era people in appointments, and he should have just cleaned the slate and started over.
Yes. As a matter of fact, this whole thing with the Ukraine got started because of an Obama holdover in the National Security Council. And he's not a whistleblower. He's just a leaker, and he doesn't have any protections as a leaker. So those are the type of things you have to do. So I would, suggest to the president is to go down and start to look at all of these agencies, all of these bureaucracies, all of these redundancies and inefficiencies, and start cutting back on it. We have a National Security Council that has over 400 members. You really don't need more than about 30 to 40 members in your National Security Council. So I think that it is time that he gets a chief of staff that is completely focused on government reform and affecting, good, effective governance. And he has to have those cabinet members that want to clean house within those respective cabinet agencies.
Well, man, this is
That's
good
good advice.
information. Good
Absolutely.
information from you.
Thanks.
So have we got any questions here for
Yeah, we sure
Colonel?
do. We sure do. We've got some good questions coming in. Here's one from Char on chat. She said, Colonel West, you said, and she's quoting you, I hope this is accurate, Colonel, but she says, she quotes you, the biggest risk in 2020 is complacency. We're
Yes.
seeing a huge increase in Democratic voter registration in this upcoming election. What would be the strategy you would implement to stir up those who are unconcerned or ignorant of the importance of this election?
Well, let me give you a case in point. Here in the state of Texas, we have 6.7 million Texans that are registered to vote and don't vote. You have 4.1 million Texans that aren't even registered to vote. So I think it's very important to get out there, and that's what leadership is all about. Leadership, looks to take a diverse group of people and focus them on the accomplishment of a singular goal. And that singular goal has to be to preserve and protect this constitutional republic. So we've got to talk about the criticality of where we are right now in our respective states. Look at what is happening in Virginia. And I will tell you that the reason why the left was able to flip the Virginia State House and State Senate, go back and look at the turnout and see what the turnout showed us. Here in the city of Dallas at the last mayoral election, we had an 8% turnout.
Wow.
That you're not going to be successful with just an 8% turnout. And I talked about the school board. Down in the Austin Independent School District, their school board voted 5-0 unanimously to implement a sex education curriculum for 3rd to 8th graders, which, Pastor, it is pornographic. I mean, pictures and everything. And this is what is happening. But yet, again, school board elections, least amount of voter participation.
They passed the same thing, this sex education bill in Colorado. And one of the things that we've learned is that in Colorado, and I think it's most places in the United States, it's local control. And one way around this is that you can actually, if you took over the school board can vote to just exempt them from sex education completely, which I think is great. Kick it back to the parents.
That's right.
Instead of cramming this sex indoctrination down our throat. So truth and liberty, I'm not at liberty to say everything we're doing, but we've got some plans to take back Colorado, and in 2020 we are going to specifically start getting these school board elections, and we are doing some things. And once we get it working here in Colorado and turn this thing around, we're going to export it to other places, and we're going to start making a difference on that.
Amen.
All politics are local.
Amen.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, we've got another question for you, Colonel. This one is from Reapa Cheap on chat. And he asks, what are the main projects Republican leaders in Texas are going to do this year to promote conservative biblical values? And here's the part you might like. How can I help?
Well, you can become a delegate to the state convention, which will be in May in Houston, and help us to become the next chairman. I think it's so important that our platform is strong and our platform is very focused, very specific. And we have got to get our elected officials, our Republican elected officials, to stand up and make sure that they are promoting and advancing these conservative platforms, principles, and policies. Unfortunately, in the last legislative session here in Texas, it was 0 to 5 for the 5 legislative priorities that came from the Republican Party of Texas. So when you have that, that is discouraging for your conservative grassroots base that is asked to go out and door knock and make phone calls and everything. So we've got to encourage and embolden our elected officials. And, Pastor, I'm telling you that one of the things we have to do is start raising up that next generation of conservative candidates and elected officials out there. I want to see us have like a farm team, like they have in baseball, single A, double A, triple A, major leagues. I want to see us, focusing on these city councils, school boards, county commissions, water districts. I want us to build a good, solid base, and we start advancing people, on up through the state house, state senate, to the U.S. House, U.S. Senate, gubernatorial elections, judgeships. And that's another very important thing that we have to be focused on, because the left always focuses on judicial activism. We need to be training up the next generation of conservative jurists that honor our Constitution and our rule of law.
Well, we certainly hadn't won that battle completely, but Trump, this is one of the great things he's done, is to promote our, what am I saying?
Yeah,
not
judges.
Promote, but anyway.
Appoint.
Appoint, that's what I was trying to think of. He has appointed so many conservative judges, of course, the 2 Supreme Court justices, but how many? 100 and...
He's upward.
150 some odd, right?
Well, I think he's over 180 now total appointments.
Man, that is awesome. And I heard a speech that Trump gave, and he thanked Obama. He said, Obama is the best thing that ever happened to us. And I was thinking, what are you saying? He said, most presidents leave 1 or 2 judges unappointed. Obama had 145 appointments that he didn't make, and he just opened the door for Trump to come in and put in all of these judges. So,
but something that was interesting, just last week, Nancy Pelosi and another one of these far left groups, they wrote a letter over to the Senate Judiciary Committee. They wanted President Trump to suspend nominating, and they wanted them to stop appointing judges as long as this thing called impeachment and the trial was hanging over President Trump's head. So there's another reason why Nancy Pelosi was holding on to these articles. She wanted to try to undermine his executive authority, his constitutional authority to nominate judges.
And I think I'm correct in saying that they have no right to tell the Senate anything. They're 2 totally different branches of government.
Right. Well, that's actually goes to one of our questions here, whether that was constitutional or not. And I think clearly it's not. I guess they can request it, but they have no obligation to do that and comply.
They can't even request it.
Yeah.
There is no collusion between the House and the Senate. There is what you call you have a reconciliation process. If the House passes a bill and the Senate passes a bill, they can come into what is called a conference committee where, much the same with the National Defense Authorization Act, you get members from the Senate Armed Services Committee, members from the House Armed Services Committee, and they reconcile the differences between the 2 different National Defense Authorization Acts. That's constitutional. But Nancy Pelosi, as the Speaker of the House, has no power to tell the Senate Majority Leader anything about his policies and procedures. And that's why the Founding Fathers were brilliant and how they established our 3 branches of government. And within the legislative branch, we have a House and a Senate that's based on 2 different things. The House is based upon the population, and the Senate is based upon equal representation of our states.
And am I also correct in thinking that she had no power to forbid Trump from defending himself during this impeachment thing, and that this whole thing was a sham?
Well, you're absolutely right. And when you look at some of the things that Chairman Adam Schiff did, they were really, again, just making the rules on the fly and as you go. That's not how we're supposed to. That's more of a banana republic than a constitutional republic.
I tell you what, it is embarrassing in a way to see the way our government is functioning, are malfunctioning, because they haven't been dealing with the things that they need to be dealing with. They've been obsessed with Russian collusion and impeachment for 3 years,
That's right.
And basically it has just stopped a lot of things from happening. It's embarrassing.
But Pastor and Richard, that's what happens when we stop teaching civics. That's what happens when we stop teaching history.
I must admit that civics was my least favorite subject, and I'm not sure that I remembered a single thing. And I don't even think they teach it today, do they?
No, they don't. And remember when we used to have Schoolhouse Rock and, you had, and I hope and pray, but today I'm still just a bill. When you're sitting around, you're eating your cereal on Saturday morning, you still were understanding our legislative processes so much about our country. But we're not teaching those things. And the sad thing is that we have young people that are in Hong Kong, standing up against the very thing that young people here in the United States of America want to embrace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're doing our part, and it may not be totally changing everything, but again, there's 10 to 80,000 people watching, and praise God, every week we're educating them on something that's happening. So,
well, Colonel, I'd like to go back to something that we talked about earlier, which is the subject of welfare and how it's undermined black families, and kind of tie that into current state of affairs. When Barack Obama was president, he was hailed as the first black president, and lots of people were very excited about that fact. But if I remember correctly, if you look at the statistics, this average condition of black families in America was not better, but worse off after he was done being in office. How has Trump fared in that area, and is that enabling him to make any gains politically among the black community?
Absolutely so. If you remember back in 2016 in Charlotte, North Carolina, President Trump issued a challenge to the black community, which no other Republican elected official, definitely not a presidential candidate, had done. He said, "What have you got to lose?" And he was totally right. And so you are now seeing, a black community. This is one of those things the media want to get out. His approval ratings in the black community is between 27 and 34%.
Wow.
When you look at the polling, and that would destroy the progressive socialist left. Why? Because the unemployment rate is historically low in the black and Hispanic communities.
It's the lowest it's ever been, not only with Hispanics and blacks, but women.
Absolutely.
It's awesome.
Look at what he's done with historical black colleges and universities that are struggling. You look at what he has done as far as criminal justice reform. One of the first things that President Obama did back in April of 2009, he canceled the DC school voucher program. So in other words, what Barack Obama said is that for you young black kids that are trying to get a quality education so that you can understand and enjoy the equality of opportunity that this country affords, I'm going to take that away from you. But yet I'm going to send my two daughters to the prestigious Sidwell Friends. And no one talked about that. President Trump has taken 7.5 million people off the poverty and welfare rolls in just 3 years. And those were people that, Obama made sure that they were on there because they need dependency.
Yeah. And they talked about all of this inequality and they did a good talk. But during Obama's time, it was the top 10% of wage earners that their wages were increasing, and the bottom portion were suffering. And I just read today that has totally flipped. Wow. That now it's the bottom 10% of wage earners that are increasing the fastest and the most. So
yes, income inequality grew under President Obama. But you're absolutely right. What you're seeing is, the lower tier of wage earners, their percentage of wage increase has, popped up anywhere from 40 to 45%. While you've only seen about a 15, 16% increase for that quote unquote, top tier, that top 10%. And that's exactly what you want to see happen. Facts don't lie. They are inconvenient truths for the progressive socialist left, but they don't lie.
That's awesome.
That is great.
Got another question here?
Yes, sir. So here's a question from Cowboy on chat, and he says, to your knowledge, what risks are we currently under within our U.S. borders to having Islamic sleeper cells taking revenge based on what we've done towards Iran?
Well, we're already there. As a matter of fact, if you go to the Border Patrol website, you will see a category called OTMs. That stands for Other Than Mexicans. And you can see, clear numbers and statistics of individuals that are coming into the United States of America from countries that are on the terrorist watch list. The thing about Mexico is a failed state. We need to be very honest about that. 80% of Mexico is under control of what we call the transnational criminal organizations, the drug cartels. And they're willing to help anyone get across into the United States of America as long as they pay them money. Texas right now, a big concern, is the #1 state in the United States of America for human and sex trafficking. Dallas and Houston are the top 2 cities in the #1 state in the United States of America for human and sex trafficking. And that's because we have this very unguarded border. I was just out in Lubbock. In Lubbock, Texas, they have 17 to 1,800 known gang members out there. El Chapo's drug cartel is freely operating in Lubbock, Texas. So you are seeing all kinds of second and third order problems that are happening in the United States of America. So yes, there is no doubt about that we have Islamist cells that are standing by and waiting for that opportunity to strike here in the United States of America. But thank God for law enforcement that is doing a heroic job in keeping us safe here in the United States of America, as well as abroad with our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and what they're doing.
And you know, Obama, he did the, what was it, the black movement about Ferguson? What would they call it?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Black Lives Matter?
Black Lives Matter, which again, Black Lives Matter, no argument with that. But in a sense,
All
it
lives
was,
matter.
All lives.
that's right. And they put down police.
Yeah.
And police were actually looked down upon, criticized, Colin Kaepernick, and on you go.
Absolutely.
And stuff. And all of that was under a black president that it actually, I believe, fueled division among the races. It didn't reconcile anything at all.
You're absolutely right. Barack Obama had such a promise. He had such an opportunity, but he turned out being exactly what we thought he was going to be, a progressive socialist leftist that looked for, as he said in 2008, the fundamental transformation of the United States of America.
He did that. He really did. It's a shame.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's exciting to think that maybe some of that is getting turned around now. Speaking of the police, under Obama, the military also became looked down upon, and Obama seemed to try to change the mission of the United States military to, social welfare organization, if you will.
Social engineering.
Social engineering, and the readiness of our military fell below standards, if I'm correct. Is that still the case now, or where do we stand?
No, I can tell you, I still have many friends that are, still serving, to include my nephew, who's a major in the Army. And over Christmas, you're old when one of your former cadets that you instructed in college is now a one-star general. I got the opportunity to visit with a brigadier general there at Fort Benning, and we had a great discussion about our young men and women. We are still producing some of the finest that our country has ever seen. And I think that you're going to see a new greatest generation with what we're asking them to do and how they fought through the decimation of their capability and capacity. And now President Trump has restored that military and that capability.
I just listened to President Trump's speech at the Value Voters Summit last year, and he said in there that I think it was the week or 2 weeks after he became president, something happened, and he asked his military people, so what are our responses? And they basically told him they're very limited, that we're out of ammo. We don't have the resources that we need. And he told them, he says, that will not be the problem ever again. And he said that he's totally rebuilt the military and made it where we are now, again, the top. All that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was powerful. Well, we've got another question here. This is from Kona on chat. In Hawaii, we can't elect the school board since they're appointed by the governor. Do you have any way for us to influence the public school even without electing the school board? Any thoughts on that from Texas?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very important that you have strong parent associations, and they have to go in and let people know that they do not want to have legislated indoctrination of their children. You go and you look at whatever the scholastic standards and achievements are, and you want to make sure that we are preparing our young people for this 21st century economy, not teaching them about, values as far as sexuality or, some of these other social issues. Even here in Collin County, I was talking to some of the folks here, and you have teachers that actually just sit down and tell kids to watch CNN and do a report on CNN. Parents got involved, and that ended. So I think parents have to still understand that they have a lot of power as long as they come together, and they've got to be concerned about their children and grandchildren and not see them being indoctrinated by, a progressive socialist leftist ideology. Look at, the person that Time Magazine named as their person of the year, the young lady from, I don't know if it's Sweden or Norway, Greta Thunberg, and how she has been used by the left, to perpetrate this narrative about climate change, which, many scientists will tell you that's not the case.
I agree. I agree. And you know, it really all comes back to we the people.
Yeah, it does.
When you think that I can't do anything about it, we can start with our school boards. And like you said, in Hawaii, if they don't have school boards, you can get into parent teachers. If people would get involved and rise up, we can change this.
Yeah.
And I still believe that the majority of Americans are conservative in heart. It's the legislature that has crammed these values down our throats and made it politically incorrect for us to disagree with them.
Absolutely.
That's called fascism.
That's what it is. And man, these socialists, so-called Democrats, are just, it's amazing that they've come out of the closet and they're admitting it now. And I mean, absolutely trying to cram socialism down our throats.
Yeah, you don't have to try to convince people anymore, Pastor.
That's a shame.
Well, Colonel, one of the most dangerous things happening in our country today, in my mind, is the LGBT movement. It's been fully embraced by the government here in Colorado, and I'm just curious, as you know, you're running for chairman of the Republican Party there. What do you think the Republican Party's position ought to be on that movement and the radical sex education stuff and transgenderism and athletes in schools and all those sort of things? We've got about 2 minutes left.
Well, first of all, we got to reclaim the language. You know, the American Psychiatric Association said that it's a mental condition called gender dysphoria, and we cannot allow the left to define the language and define the narrative. Look, sexuality is a behavior, and sexuality is not a right. And I think that somehow we have allowed that to become so, to the point where, you know, Christians are being punished. You know about Jack Phillips right there in Colorado, who had to go before the Supreme Court because of his religious beliefs. So I don't think that we should allow the left to be able to define their ideological agenda as rights that they will put over our true constitutional rights. The first one being, you know, in our Bill of Rights is the freedom of religion and the free exercise thereof. So, you know, I believe that marriage is between, you know, one man and one woman. Does not mean that we cannot support a policy such as civil unions. And that's one of the things that I talked about down in South Florida, where I had a very large gay community in the district. And look, that was something they couldn't argue against. I told them what I was for, not what I was against. And we cannot allow people to continue to undermine our traditional values in this country and try to make us seem as troglodytes because we hold on to those principles and beliefs.
And I think it's terrible that they even tied LGBTQ stuff to civil rights type of thing. That is something
to me is condescending and offensive.
It is offensive because that's your race or your.
You're born that way.
Yeah, you can't change that. But like you said, sexuality is absolutely a choice. It's a behavior.
You know, it's amazing because Mayor Buttigieg, you know, came out a couple of weeks ago and he made a statement saying that he could have simpatico with the black community because of he being a gay man from the Midwest. And
Colonel, I'm going to have to break in. We're down to 40 seconds to go. I'm sorry. We were just
what I told him is I don't think there's ever been a gays-only hospital. And I was born in a blacks-only hospital.
Well, thank you for being with us. It's a real honor to have you with us. And, man, we appreciate your insight and you standing up for conservative values. That's a blessing.
Always will, sir.
So thank you very much, and thank all of you for joining with us tonight. Man, I believe that this has been a blessing to you. And remember, we do this every Monday night, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. We also have our Truth and Liberty website that has a wealth of information on there and links to other places. So please check it out. Our Truth and Liberty website, it's truthandliberty.net. God bless you. Goodbye.
Join us next time for the Truth and Liberty broadcast. Find tonight's episode and related articles and links at truthandliberty.net. Truth and Liberty is viewer supported. If you'd like to help us continue our live casts, you can make a donation at truthandliberty.net or by calling our phone center at 719-635-1111. Our prayer ministers are there to help you with your donations and to pray with you.